Hey gang, Rob here. So today I'm going to talk about both week 6 and week 7 for weekly beats. I just finished week 7, so I'm just going to do them both. They're both very different songs, but I still think they will be worthwhile. All right, week 6. The goal for week 6 was I wanted to do something fun and simple. The reference song was actually a week 5 submission on Weekly Beats by an artist called Zac Efron. The song's called Fish Nand Blood, and it's like, I don't know, some people would call it hyper pop, some people would call it like electronic punk rock. It was just like up tempo, full of energy, and I heard it and I was just like, holy shit, I want to do something like this, which is kind of the beauty of Weekly Beats. You know, you get that inspiration and you can just like run out and try something. So yeah, I just wanted to do something fun and simple, upbeat, almost more like music that I used to do, you know, 10 years ago or so. So yeah, that was the goal and song reference for this week. I'm actually going to show what I did on guitar. Yeah, let's hop into that. Well, first off, we are in DAEAC C# E. Some people call it one of the Midwest emo tunings. That's kind of how I know it. It's basically an open chord. So the top 5 strings are an A major chord. And then you have the D, which is the 4th. Just makes this really pretty sound. I got tons of distortion, obviously, so that's a whole other thing. But obviously chords are different. But what's nice is it allows you just to really like play open strings. And everything sounds great. It's actually really easy tuning to play in. So I wanted to do something in that. All my previous songs have been in E standard. The chords that I primarily used, which is an A, I think it's just an A major, down to the E, and then up to an F sharp, C sharp, A. It's an inversion, I think. So yeah, nice chord sounds. And then the one verse has harmonics, very early yeahs, if you've listened to them. You know, not the Maps type stuff, but they're more like garage punky sound. It's just all on the 5th fret and the high strings. Actually, high driven. There we go. That like... I love it. And that's like a little verse part. The bass, I think the whole time is just... It's just those 3 notes, the same A, E, F sharp, pretty much the whole time. I guess the outro, if you will, there's a guitar tapping part. So it's the same chords, the A, E, F sharp, but up an octave. So although I don't think that's the same F sharp. No. But it's those chords and then tapped primarily on the 12th fret, so something like this. But the first one changes. So 10, 11, 10, 12, 12, 12, 10, 11, 10. And then it just goes 12 again. There's a little lick, a transition lick, really easy. So I'm going to go down to the 7th leading tone and then resolve. That's like, there's like a hallmark lick in this tuning because it's all open string. It's like pull off, another pull off, and then, you know, I'm droning up on the 2 strings because I'm doing the, this is an A, so I'm doing the G sharp. Love it. And that's all of the guitar parts, I believe. I'm using my Sansamp GT2, really high gain. Usually with this tuning, a cleaner tone is better so you can actually hear all the wrung out strings. But since I'm primarily playing like 3-note chords, it sounds pretty good. Let's switch over to the actual track and we'll look at it. Okay, so more of the track. Here's what I did. I always, even though I'm programming drums, I always do stick clicks. I just think it sounds nice. So that is the A chord down to the E, then up to the F sharp. That's it. Here's the harmonics I was telling you about. So there you go. Here's that little lick. And then the guitar tapping. It helps have compressor on for tapping. A lot of people recommend that to help with bringing the notes out, because it can be kind of quiet when you're tapping. High gain or a compressor. So if you're going more clean tone, definitely throw a compressor on. It helps those notes pop out. Yeah, so that's guitar parts. Let's talk about... The bass is just, again, the Soraboy VST, which is this Game Boy VST. So pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah, just playing the root notes of the chords. Then the synth, also Soraboy. So 2 panned parts here. And so I just have them panned. Here's Soraboy using a preset I made called Chippy. I think I changed them. I think they're a little slightly different. Yeah, so this crosshair is the vibrato Soraboy Chiptune, so you can see I have the speed set differently. I think other than that, they're the same exact preset, but I wanted them to sound a little bit different, so changed the vibrato amount and speed, and then moved it along the graph here. I do a little chorus-y type thing here. It really sits pretty far down in the mix, but it fills it out pretty nice. One of those things where you don't notice it's gone until you take it out. Made an effort to do more fills. I'm a drummer myself. I hate programming drums. It's just so time consuming to like me just air drumming. I would love to get an electronic drum kit and be able to like bang things out. Okay, last part, vocals. So last week I went away for the weekend with a bunch of my game developer friends. We get an Airbnb every year and we hang out and play video games and board games. But there was a dry sauna in this one and I was like, yo, we should record vocals. And so I just like hit up a few of my friends. I was like, you want to do vocals real quick? And so it's a real simple, like 2 or 3 lines. We recorded in this dry sauna. It was kind of nice, like it contained the sound, right? It didn't reverberate too much. But what I ended up doing is my friend Ben, he sang in the same register as me. And my other friend, Monica, she listened and harmonized. And I was like, okay, cool. We got 3 vocals. Those will stack nice. But then I'm like, wait, let me take Ben and my vocals, since they are the same register, pan them hard left, hard right, and then put Monica, who's harmonizing, right down the middle. It sounds pretty good. I mean, obviously I'm talking about my own track, but I dig it. So I'm left, Ben's right, Monica's center. Yeah, so I love that. Here's what it sounds like in context. Yeah, I'm pleased as punch with that. And then I literally copy and pasted and kind of just did the old stack and, you know, hide something and then bring it back. So that's the whole track. Okay, so third part, what did I learn? So the learning here, the first one was the panning vocals trick. That was fun. You know, it makes me think like, okay, similar things can maybe be panned hard left and hard right. I do that with my guitars, right? I'll pan a guitar hard left and then same settings, except I'll change one thing. I'll move the pickup selector. I'll slightly change a delay or a distortion, and then that'll pan that hard right. But for the most part, they sound pretty similar. Same thing with Ben and I. If you hear us together, you know, we're slightly different, but we're singing the same notes in the same register. Something new right down the middle, or something similar but different right down the middle. So that's like Monica's harmonies. So that was like a nice aha moment of like, oh, panning and how to use it to kind of create something new and interesting. Speaking of making something interesting, I made a big effort to create the fills, like I said, on drums. That little quick snare hit, this one. Very common, you know, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. It adds so much when you add drum fills and make them more interesting, but gosh, it's so tedious. I think it's tedious because I'm a drummer, and I'm like, oh, this is so much easier if I could just sit down and play, and I would make it way more interesting. But I think those are the big things I learned. Other than that, you know, this is the first week. Maybe I didn't do like a very obvious shoegazy type heavy, like slow and heavy song, and just being okay with that and being like, I want to do what I want to do. This is going to be fun. So yeah, that's week 6. The track was called Lost Map. It's about being lost in a forest and not having your map and not knowing how to get out. Again, dark fantasy all the way through all these tracks. All right, let's switch gears and talk about track 7 or week 7. So my goal for week 7 was to use the Volca keys. This is a analog synth. I've had this little guy for, gosh, over 10 years now. And listen, I know how to use this, I think, but I definitely learned a lot more about it over the past week. So goal achieved. It's a, you know, analog synth. My understanding is, you know, in order to make sound, it's moving through electronic bits like capacitors and circuitry, just like a tube amp versus a digital amp. It provides a little bit of a different sound. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people prefer the opposite, but it's fun to have, and it's cool, and it's nice to, you know, turn knobs to make cool sounds and see what they do. The workflow is a little bit different, but anyway, my goal is to use this and make a track with this. Additionally, I used this pedal called the Zoom Multi-Stomp. This is the MS70 CDR. They have a couple of these. Now, this is a multi-effects pedal. It's got stereo in and out, so it pairs well with synths, especially because it's primarily a chorus, delay, and reverb pedal. It has a whole bunch of emulations of other pedals, other classic pedals, plus their own little sounds. But the reverbs and delays are killer in this thing, and right about the time the Volca came out, this came out, and they got popular on YouTube because people were pairing them up. And this just goes so well with synths, you know, especially with the stereo input and output. So I wanted to use these two. You know, I didn't want to add like any VST synths, any guitar. Now, as far as the rec song or reference song, I was listening to, there's this dungeon synth artist called Witchbolt, and he has this great process video where he breaks down how he writes music, and it's crazy. He uses GarageBand, and it seems like he uses the built-in synths and then uses musical typing. You know, where you play the keyboard on your computer keyboard. Difficult, but you watch him create a great dungeon synth song in like, you know, an hour. So very inspiring. And I like that type of music, and I always wanted to create something like that. I've created ambient music with my synthesizers, but I wanted to create something more dungeon synthy. So that was the goal. That was a reference song. That's part 1. Moving on to part 2, how did I do this? So obviously using the Volca, I just have an out on this up here, like a headphone that I ran to my mixer, and well, actually, sorry, I ran it into the pedal first and ran this out into my mixer, just stereoed it, and then just recorded it in Reaper. So here's the track, and I did 3 tracks plus a sample track. This is a sample of Crows. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute here, but I credited the creator on my Weekly Beats channel if you want to see that link. But basically, I created a melody, chords, and then bass. Very simple, very cut and dry. I wanted to keep it pretty minimal this week, but here is the main melody, again from the Volca keys, using reverb and delay and a little tremolo from the Zoom pedal, the multi-effects pedal. You can hear that motion in there. Like, it's not a steady note. And there's 2 reasons. Obviously the tremolo, I never know how to say it, from the Zoom, but also the Korg synth has what's called, I probably can't get it in here, but it has a detune knob, and detune does what it says on a tin. It starts to detune the note, but if you do just a little, it makes this nice motion to the synth sound, which a lot of people like. And so I have a little bit of detune going on there. The chords, so the Volca has a setting where you can do poly, which means you can play up to 3 notes, specifically on this one, no more than 3 notes. And so I'm playing, I think, just 2 note chords here, 4 chords total, but each are like 2 notes. At a little bit of a higher range, right? It's not bassy, but I think these really established the mood. This is what I started with, writing these chords. And then to kind of fill it out, I just did a bass note. Now the bass, I did a different setting. You can see this big knob up here. It has a whole bunch of settings. It has poly, which I just mentioned, but then it has an octave setting where you can only play one note at a time, but it will on its own play the octave up from there. And so I'm doing that for the bass. And this really kind of fills out the track, right? Also like classic synth sound, classic analog synth sound. So good. Like, that's the nice thing about analog synths. They just kind of like, I don't know, just sound good immediately to me. Obviously I threw some reverb on these, little EQ, little reverb. Even though they were getting some through the pedal, I just wanted a little bit more to make them cohesive once they hit the DAW. And so that honestly is most of the track. Up here, I fade out the melody and I slowly bring in this crow sample. And this is just the mood, to fit the mood of a dungeon synth, right? This kind of, to me, evokes like, I don't know, like a busted up night walking through like an open field, you know, coming home from like terrible battles, terrible shit, and it's just like, what is my life? But yeah, it just kind of has a mood piece. And again, I credited the creator over on my weekly beats for this track. And then I just loop back in the melody and drop the bass and just have the chords. And I kind of like this part. It just kind of like lets you focus on the feel, and then I loop everything back in and then eventually fade it out. So yeah, that's the track. A minor key, I believe I did this in A minor, which is all the white keys starting on A. You know, the relative major would be C major. So that makes it super easy. But yeah, that's the track. So part 3, what did I learn? The first one was a different sound, right? I've never done a dungeon synth sound before. I've done ambient, but this is a little bit different. So it was cool to explore this, and especially with that melody, like I was like trying to find that sound, and I was literally like turning the knobs. I had it, you can see I have the MIDI here. I was just looping that, right, and just turning knobs on the Volca, and then it was like, bam, I found the sound, and I was like, cool. Funny note on that, funny side tangent. I got that cool sound, and I was like, how do I save this? Like, you can't save presets on a synth like this. And so I was talking to the synth community I'm part of. Shout out to Tosca Abyss, I think I'm saying that right. DAEAC, a local synth head that I met, and we were chatting, and I was chatting in his Discord, and someone was like, oh, you need a sampler. And I was like, this is why some people use, or why synth people like samplers so much. And it makes sense though, right? You find a cool sound, you sample it, and then you have it. I just never thought of it that way. I always thought it like, you know, capturing, you know, train tracks and stuff. So yeah, cool sound. It popped. It was great. You know, I kind of show my whole hand right at the front here. I come out of the gate with all 3 tracks, like the most you're gonna get. Granted, the crows come in a little bit later, but like you get everything right up front. And so artist I was referencing here, Witchbull, he has a process video, and in a minute he talks about trusting the listener. Like, it's common, and I do it all the time, where you like have a part and then you introduce a new part and then you introduce a new part. You just start layering and stacking, which is cool, and I will continue to do. But there's something to be said about just like coming out of the gate with everything and trusting the listener to like hear, oh, I hear the chords, I hear the bass, I hear the melody. That's something I wanted to try, something a little bit new. And then I think the last thing I learned was the week before, when I was making the kind of pop punky song, I was like, man, I want to mess around with my synth, you know, after talking to DAEAC and his partner Abby, and, you know, they're both synth players. And I was like, oh man, I got my little Korg, and it would be fun to use that and really dive in and understand it. And I watched a bunch of videos, but part of me kept saying like, no, you got to do a shoegaze song. That's what you committed to. You got to do this guitar driven stuff. Give yourself permission to not do the thing you said you were going to do. I'm so happy I did this. I'll probably do this for another week or 2. And yeah, allow yourself to experiment. I think that's the point of weekly beats, is to experiment and try new things. So that was a big learning lesson. So yeah, that's week 7. That's the end of part 3 of week 7. So I will not be back next week. I just did 3 weeks, and I do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So I'll be taking a break next week, and then I'll be back. Probably do something similar, maybe ambient, maybe more droney, but definitely something with the Korg. I had a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I'll see everybody then. Good luck. If there's anything else you want me to do, like, you know, I did the guitar thing for the previous track. I showed how I played that on guitar. If you want more of that sort of thing, happy to do that. Let me know. But yeah, good luck, everyone, and I'll see ya.